for my sins, I came up to Wales in 2004 because I couldn't quite believe that a river that looked as magnificent as the Wye and the Usk had the problems that they were having. And it's been sort of 20 years worth of work trying to solve these problems and, well, first of all, understand the problems and then solve the problems. So to give you just a little bit of hope, when we started the Wye and Usk Foundation, the problems were sheep grazing of riparian habitat, too many weirs in the rivers, no gravel below Ellen Valley Reservoir, acidified headwaters, and sheep dip. Those problems have gone away. With Louis is fence from my head of operations is fence from Abergavenny to Aberdeen. We're putting gravel in below Ellen Valley. We're liming the headwaters that were acid. The sheep dip problem has gone away. We then sort of moved on to the soil problem. So there was a massive amount of soil loss, and the soil was choking the habitat and the river gravels in the main stem of the Wye and the lower lug. That was sort of 8 years worth of work, engaging 1,850 farmers. And again, that's changed. I've now got salmon spawning successfully at Hay and at Glaisbury and at Bredwardine and at the lower end of the lug. So that's changed and it's got better. So it proves that change could happen. But while the two things that have sort of crept up on us are, firstly, in 2018, I don't know if you knew, there was a 70-day drought. So we had 70 days without rain in the spring. It meant that the first silage crops failed, the hay crop failed. There was a serious fodder problem for farmers in Wales. The response of the Welsh Government was to promote and fund the planting of stubble turnips in upland Wales to give the stock food during the winter. Anyone who's seen a stubble turnip field in February and you see this bare compacted earth that's basically impervious, and the sheep have been kept in Wales, they're no longer going down into Herefordshire as tax sheep, so they're up there, and when we are building wetlands, the way that we make ground impermeable, make clay impermeable, the bit of kit we use is called a sheep roller, because it mimics sheep's feet, and sheep's feet make ground impervious. So now we've got this problem that we've got these massive floods barreling down the river. And we used to get 5.5 metre floods at Hereford. Until 2019, we used to get them about once every 8 years. These are the floods that flood Greyfriars in Hereford. We used to get them once about every 8 years. Since 2019, we've had 6. Things have changed. And they've changed, and this is the law of unintended consequences. So what these floods have done is they've ripped out the ranunculus in the main stem. Particularly Dennis, the one that came down in February 2020, ripped out the ranunculus in the main stem. We're in a situation at the moment that last winter we only had a 5.33 metre flood, but it came out of the Eithne and the Upper Wye. So it barreled down the upper river, but as it came down, it dissipated as it came down the river system because it was coming out of 19% of the catchment at the top end. So we're left with a situation, as I look at the river today, that I've got no ranunculus above Hereford. Bridge Sollers is still completely clear, I checked it the other day, but below Hereford we've got lots of ranunculus. And so the result is, above Hereford at the moment, we've got green water, and below Hereford, by the time you get down to Redbrook, the water's cleaning up. This is because ranunculus is the keystone habitat in the river system. It's the buffer. Ranunculus holds hundreds of thousands of algae-eating species. So when you get, it's like the mangrove forests of the river system. So when you have your ranunculus, the algae is munched, and you don't get the algal blooms. The problem that we've got is, and then the other problem that we've got is that we've got this legacy phosphorus problem, which is what was mentioned earlier. That we've got ourselves into a situation that we're applying around 7,000 tonnes of phosphorus to the catchment soils and only exporting about 3,500 tonnes as food products coming out of the system. So that all that phosphorus that's coming in, most of it is coming in as manures, so feedstocks that are being fed to animals, that the manures are then being spread on the ground. We've still got fertiliser being spread, and we've still got sewage waste being spread on ground. Until 2020, we thought this was okay because phosphorus is sticky, it sticks to soil, it doesn't come out of the soil. And then the Refocus boys, who had done their work on the Wye that we'd instigated in 2018, came out with these results that they were finding soil poor water, so this is free water in the soils, with phosphorus levels that weren't dissimilar to sewage works. Now, if your catchment is starting to lose phosphorus at that sort of level from the soil, you are in trouble. You're in big trouble. So, how do you solve these problems? Well, I will deal with the phosphorus one first. There's two pathways we can take. One pathway is reducing the number of bums in the catchment. So this is destocking the catchment. But then the first one is we have to get to a point that we're not applying any bad fertilizer anymore to the catchment, and the sewage sludge needs to be put into a pyrolysis plant and exported as biochar. But they're done. We'll still have a fundamental problem, which is just the manures alone put us out of sync. So we can either destock the number of bums in the catchment, which requires government money, or if we can't access the government money as the Why Us Foundation, so we're working on what we can work on. So you have to take this manure and create fertilizer-grade phosphorus from this manure to export it to the places that have got phosphate deficiencies, mostly the east of England, the arable areas in the east of England. We have the technology to do it, so we can strip the phosphorus from digestate using polymers and chemicals. We can use pyrolysis, we can use incineration, and there's little bits of plants starting to pop up in Herefordshire to do it. But what we need is a massive injection on this to actually accelerate it to make it happen. So this is where the work that we're doing with the supermarkets, particularly Tesco's, has a role to play here. Because the commitment from Avara last year that they will not be spreading any manures in excess of crop need by the end of 2024 was as a result of a letter from Tesco's to Avara saying, come on boys, this is not good, your contract's in danger unless you sort this out. So we need another letter to come to say, okay, great, you made the commitment, but we actually need you to put some money into this. And then we need to organise the logistics hubs within this. And all I can say is the pathway for how we solve this is there. The pathway for how it can happen is there. So I think that one's getting better, but we've still got this problem that for about the net, even if we destock completely or we get all the phosphorus out, we've still got a problem that we've got so much phosphate in our soils, and climate change and the warming of our soils is causing it to release faster. So we have to get the buffering capacity back into the river system, and the buffering capacity is the ranunculus. So this is where we then switch our attention to come back to Wales, and we come back to this fact of this overstocking that we've got in Wales. And this is where I don't think it can be done through government. The reason being that we haven't got any soil regulation in Wales, and if you look at the problems that the Welsh Government have had trying to bring in nitrate vulnerable zones with judicial reviews from the NFU and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we haven't got any soil regulation, and we haven't got any phosphorus regulation in Wales. That is causing, on one side of the thing, it's causing some of the bad actors in England who are now getting their collars felt to move to Wales, and they're now moving their operations to Wales and impacting on the Usk in particular. But also, it means that I can't see a way that we can get these laws in unless Wales bows to political pressure. Welsh Government in particular bows to political pressure. So the MVZs came in as a result of a programme from Dot Davis on slurry and the problems the Wales was having with slurry. So if we can get a similar makeup of people writing and complaining and giving the solution and saying we need soils regs, we need phosphate regs, we need an equality of regulation across the county, across the catchment. We need the same regs that apply in England to also apply in Wales. Then we can start to build the regulatory floor that will allow this to happen. But I think the big one here is there is currently a river of money coming out of companies for offsetting, for ESG. And at the moment it's being done badly. It's planting Sitka spruce in Galloway and Ceredigion and West Wales, and it's not right at the moment. But there is a potential that if we can understand this problem better, and we can build a political will, and we can put the regulatory floor in, and then we can harness this money with certainty, we can genuinely transform how upland Wales is being managed. That benefits the farmers, it benefits the river, and it benefits carbon sequestration and biodiversity and all the other things that we're doing. But it's not going to be easy, but there is a pathway by which we can do this. And I would say, as I come up to the end of my 15 minutes, that we have got, as the Why and Us Foundation, we've got a track record of solving these problems. And one of the things that, when you're talking about phosphorus or you're talking about flooding, these are wicked, complex problems. And it's not the job, the Why and Us Foundation can only play a role in this. It's the job of a whole multitude of people, the regulators, the businesses, the councils, the overall governments, the farmers, the citizen scientists, the campaigners, all the people. And if you are all working in the same direction, so at the moment, if you imagine you've got a great pile of levers, if you can get everyone pulling the levers in the right direction, in the same direction, change happens quickly. When people are pulling levers in all different directions, you end up with a sort of a stuttering, it doesn't really happen. So that's where we are at the moment. We're trying to, with the Why Catchment Partnership is in place. I want to reinvigorate it. This brings everybody onto the same page and understanding of what we need, what needs to happen, and then we can start to make it happen. So I've got a major investment from the water company to try and make it happen on the Usk, and I will translate that finding as soon as that finding comes across onto the Why. So that's the best I can offer. Thank you.